late 20s and early 30s, two brothers from MIT, down the street from me. So we worked together to decide to do something about this, this job matching problem. And our core notion was that if we had a better computer-driven, so-called machine learning-driven, those of you who might have a technical or a math or a computer science background would recognize the term. It's a form of adaptive learning, but if we have a better way to test people and to learn more and more as more and more tests are done, so the tests get more and more accurate, the more people take them, the better the likelihood of our being able to match the particular strengths of an individual to a particular job opportunity. It would seem to us it would have a better chance of success than simply crowding people into large rooms. So that's what we set out to do. We started a company called Aspiring Minds about 5 plus years ago in New Delhi. It's now a semi-global company, but at that time it was just the two boys and myself. And all it was I think, a slightly brighter way of testing people on any number of dimensions that were specified by a potential company, organization, nonprofit, government department, and going out and getting thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of kids to take the test, plausible pools of talent for that particular demand that was being evinced, and somehow guiding them to the right opportunity. That was a core idea. Now, it didn't matter whether the test that we were doing was for a very abstract skill, like writing complicated code for a computer, or indeed some of the people that we saw in the field today, your Shastro Shevikas, your healthcare workers and things of that nature. So it doesn't matter what level of cognitive ability necessarily is evinced, as long as you could specify what the attributes were that you wish to see, we could use our algorithms which are of course just a very abstract idea, to construct tests that then were applied to a bunch of people and came up with some answers of what their pluses and minuses were on these dimensions. So that's what the company set out to do. Just graphically, again, millions of companies and many millions of graduates, and you need to find some way to match them, right? I can't see from here very well. Okay, let me look at it here. So to answer questions like, I need a job, will I be employable? How do I signal my employability to potential companies who might employ me? And on the company side, how do we sift through millions of candidates in many instances to find the few tens, hundreds that we might need? And how do we hire those who would succeed in a job in our particular organizational culture? So these are questions that we set out to address. I'll just show you a few snapshots of this that I asked my colleague to send this morning. He's based in Chicago now. So of a particular type in engineering, having to do with entry-level engineering jobs. These are some of the things that we tested for the engineers: language, written and spoken, cognitive skills, functional skills, personality, practical intelligence and soft skills, etc. Using various kinds of standardized assessments. And we found, at least in the Indian data, that as many as 51% of qualified engineers did not know the meanings of words such as absurd, generic, seize, adamant, things like that. So half the people could not, even though it's a world where much business is conducted in English, the engineering world, people could not interpret simple directions that had these common English words in them. 56% of graduate engineers in India did not know how to cut and paste text. 42% of engineers could not divide two numbers or multiply two numbers, two simple numbers. Now, this would be funny, except it's not funny, right? That's the problem, it's not funny. And you can understand the quandary and the problem. Now, when we drove this morning to Manikganj, was it? Yeah. We passed a lot of so-called schools and universities. So I kept pointing out the window and saying, is that a real school? And you probably have the same problem we have in India, which is a lot of shell institutions, some well-meaning, others fraudulent, popping up in the countryside. Some of them are land scams. There's a lot of corruption in getting these things up and running. There are quacks who masquerade as teachers, and unsuspecting young people going into them, accumulating paper degrees that aren't worth the paper that they're written on. So of course there's a problem. The talent is neither being nurtured, nor is it able to pass any simple tests for the qualifications that they are supposed to be carrying around. Naturally, the companies are frustrated. So I had a very simple ballpark test. I serve on a number of corporate boards, global boards, and boards in India and Asia. And I would go to my colleagues and just do the simple straw man test. I'd ask people in prominent companies operating in India, what are the schools that you operate on? And without fail, they would all list the same 10 universities. And then they would complain that it's very hard to find people because everybody we find, but they're all chasing the same 50 people. They're all job hopping from one place to another. The wages are flying through the roof. And meanwhile, 99.9% of people don't get a chance to come in front of these companies. So the job seekers are frustrated, the job providers are frustrated, and the only people who are happy are the guys who are producing fake schools and universities. So we are out to fix that problem, which I think is a core development problem in the allocation of talent. And at the core of the way we're trying to fix it, we meaning this particular company, and there are lots of other well-meaning entrepreneurs who are trying to take a whack at this problem. We in this Aspiring Minds today is about a 300-person company, a lot of technical people in a few cities, a few countries around the world. But that's the problem that we're trying to fix. We're trying to make it so that any child who thinks, for instance, in this case, that he or she is an engineer should have the opportunity to be tested on engineering attributes, regardless of where they're born, the color of their skin, the village that they came from, the school that they went to. It shouldn't matter whether they went to BRACU or somewhere else. If they can take the test and show on these 15 or 20 attributes, they can succeed. They ought to have a shot at the job. And that's what we're after. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. Now, if you scale that and say that this is not just about engineering, it's about, today in India, for instance, we probably have about 1,000 corporate clients, large corporate clients. We probably had, at least in this year, 100,000 people got jobs because of us, white-collar jobs, people who were from disenfranchised locations who wouldn't have otherwise. I think that's a meaningful improvement in a small number of people, and you scale that up tenfold, and you can see that this can begin to make some difference. Okay. This is just some other, we do a lot of tests of spoken English and the technology. What's really promising about these sorts of things is you don't need much capital to do this. You just need an idea. You can use your simple phone to write algorithms and code if you have an inclination in that direction. So we have a wonderful new test of spoken English where you simply speak into your standard phone, and we can grade you on pronunciation, enunciation, articulation, grammar using artificial intelligence algorithms. And for jobs like the front desk clerk in a hotel or a telephone operator or any number of places where spoken English is important, that suddenly becomes a mechanism for people to find jobs. And keep going. So, where are we going with this? We want to democratize talent in some ways, access to talent. We can test in universities and colleges. We're now starting to test with these so-called MOOCs. I don't know if you folks are familiar with that acronym, but massive online courses, the kinds of courses that you offer on the web that people can sign up for free anywhere in the world, and you have tens of thousands of people taking each course. We can test them online and provide instantaneous adaptive assessments. We can test, sorry, the glare on this computer is not allowing me to read. Training institutions, training on the job, self-trained lifelong learners. We can keep on assessing them. We can go on our website and click and take a test and find out how you stack up compared to others. And the idea is that you take this standardized employability assessment, you get a single benchmark, you figure out what job you're fit for, you put it on your resume, you load it up on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has done a partnership with us to allow this to go make this available worldwide. You can access this by computer anywhere, you get a job. The same benchmark also gives you areas that you need to improve on. So our hope is that you take that benchmark and go somewhere else and remedy something that you couldn't do, and so on and so forth, right? So this is the idea of, in this case, two colleagues and myself. There's a clear problem. It's not that I have access to untold amounts of money, but I have the ability to think, just like my students do, and so we assigned ourselves a task. How is it that we can solve the problem that is staring us in the face, that's staring you in the face also if you look out the window? Is there something that we can do to address it? Which of course is the core thing that any entrepreneur should do. You take whatever assets are available at your disposal, you look at the problems around you, and you find something that you think is fun to do, and go ahead and take a whack at it. So I want to suggest that there's a conceptual framework underlying what I just said, and then I'll relate that conceptual framework to the particular company example that I just gave you, Aspiring Minds. But before I do that, let me just tell you where Aspiring Minds is. Aspiring Minds is now in, I'd say, half a dozen countries, providing jobs to thousands of corporations who hire through us, not exclusively through us, but through us, partnering with a whole host of job portals and companies and doing technical assessments for, I don't know what some good examples are, Amazon, LinkedIn, people like that, and also companies in different developing countries. So it's really grown from a very tiny idea to begin to provide jobs. The thing I'm most proud of is providing jobs to kids who are from disadvantaged backgrounds, but who are every bit as smart as those who go to the best universities and otherwise would not have a chance. But let me come to this conceptual idea. So at the center of any successful enterprise, whether it's your very own BRAC, which I'm so proud to be standing in today, or this tiny enterprise called Aspiring Minds, or my university, Harvard, there is an animating idea. There is something, some insight that somebody had that they felt really good about, passionate about, and want to do something with. The question is, how do you make that idea come to fruition? And typically, if you're in the part of the world that I live in, my adopted homeland in Boston these days, you have access to a whole host of support services that allow you to take that idea and run with it, right? So just illustratively, you have access to risk capital. You have venture capitalists and angels come and offer you money if you have a good idea. You have business schools, I'd say subserviently. You have market research firms, you have accountants, auditors, logistics people, all sorts of stuff. But you need to leverage, get leverage from all these entities to launch the idea. Now the problem in most developing countries is that this supporting ecosystem is missing. Yeah? And it becomes that much harder to take the idea and launch it and bring it to market. So what my colleagues and I at Harvard have been doing is creating conceptual frameworks for different developing countries, emerging markets, saying that when you have different sorts of inadequacies, deficiencies, voids, we refer to them as institutional voids in some of our work, how is it that you get an idea and take it to market in effect? What is the sequence of steps that you would use? How are particular institutional inadequacies related to different ways of getting something to market? Things of that nature, which is an abstract way of thinking about it, but it's also an incredibly powerful and simplifying way of thinking. I'm not going to go through these, but this is a taxonomy of different sorts of things that people do. So if you think about Aspiring Minds, what is it basically doing? It is serving as what we would refer to as a credibility enhancer in the market for talent. In other words, why should my claim that I am an A mathematician and a C linguist be palatable to some unknown person? There's no reason why somebody should believe me. I might be misrepresenting for personal gain my own perception of my strengths. Or I may simply not have the basis to make a self-assessment. But if I can go to a credible intermediary, that's the credibility enhancer. In this case, Aspiring Minds aspires itself to be a credibility enhancer. They can administer the test and they can certify that yes, this is an A+ mathematician and a C+ linguist. And then people can, and if we can do that successfully and credibly, and our results hold up in the market, then we're off to the races with a viable institution. So the absence of a credibility enhancer in that example would make it difficult for the market for talent to clear. In other words, people who want access to a certain kind of talent won't be. But through the actions of some entrepreneurs, they have filled that particular void, they have solved that, addressed that institutional inadequacy, and provided a way for people to take a test and certify that they are this kind of person and they are therefore deserving of this kind of job. So filling of each of these voids is itself an entrepreneurial act, and that's what you need to develop the ecosystem. The ecosystem is deficient in places like my country, India, and Bangladesh, indeed many places around the world, because there are particular institutional inadequacies. And that has two consequences, and this is the main theme that I want to emphasize. The first is that it requires a lot of ingenuity and creativity to take a particular idea and bring it to market, because you've got to find a way through this minefield of missing stuff in some ways. And the second, the missing stuff is itself an opportunity to be an entrepreneur. So that's what I see, because I'm such a congenital optimist. I look out of my window and I say, I could build 10 businesses here, because I see so many simple problems, right? So the Vice Chancellor was saying, why can't we use creativity to solve the traffic problem? That's the question I put to you. I mean, I've been here 36 hours, it's driven me crazy already, just trying to go around the block. I tried to persuade Professor Razzak to let me walk from the hotel here, and he wouldn't hear of it, and I still don't understand why, because it took 40 minutes to walk here, and it's a 6-minute walk. So, I don't know, that's what I mean. It's a problem, there's a deficiency, but it's also an opportunity for somebody to address. And that's the nature of the thinking that I try to engender in my students and try to live my life around by actually putting my own time and my own money on the table and say, let's take a whack at it and see if we can fix it. Okay, I'm going to give you another example. Again, in the card of Manikganj, we were taking pictures of your local tea shops, which are, you know, the enterprising, typically quite poor people who stand on the roadside and pour tea for you and give it to you for 10 taka or 8 taka or something like that. Or even more simply, they pour it into a plastic cup when you're, last night, standing in front of the Parliament building, some guy was selling for 5 taka in a little plastic cup tea. So we had a nice conversation with him to figure out what his return on investment was. It's actually pretty high. He would buy a flask for a certain amount, and within 3 days he earned enough to pay off the flask. I thought that was a pretty good return on investment. If your capex can be returned within 3 days, you can make a lot of money. So, another student of mine who actually had a very high-flying career at Microsoft, he quit, and I started a company to replace, in India we would call it the chai wala. Chai is tea, that may be a term familiar to you. I'll use that term here because there seems to be sufficient similarity between my language and Bangla. But you understand, so this is the kind of guy that walks around in my country and yours selling tea for a few taka, essentially. And we thought, the aspiration that we had about 3.5 years ago was, can we create a Starbucks for poor people? Starbucks is very expensive. Starbucks in Shanghai is, Starbucks in my backyard in Boston is $2 a cup of coffee. In Bombay it is about the same, $2.50. In Shanghai it's $6. It's pretty expensive. I mean, most people would not be able to afford $2. How many taka? $160. 160 taka for a small. 160 taka for a cup of tea. That's a bit much. So I said, we've got to be able to do this better. And since people in my country drink tea primarily, I interpret Starbucks as being about tea. So that's the task that we set out to do. And we created a company called Chai Point. So I'm going to show you some pictures. This is one of our first chai points in Bangalore, southern Indian city of Bangalore. And you know, it's a 200 square feet type of street side location. And it has a very simple proposition. The proposition is that the tea should be extremely clean, served in extremely clean surrounding. It should be brightly colored. There should be evidence of hygiene everywhere. And it should not be too different from street price. Those are the parameters. In other words, 10 taka is allowed to go to 15 taka, but that's about it. And we created this, and we experimented for about 18 months with 2 stores. One experiment was a huge failure, and the other one worked out eventually. And these are just pictures of one of them in Bangalore, and that's one of our employees. Today we have, about 3 years since we started, we have 42 stores, with about 6 opening each month, 6 to 9 opening each month. And so we're in a good clip, all still in just Bangalore and Delhi. But with a backbone infrastructure that we're creating that will support about 1,000 stores in the next very short while. But I want to come back to the conceptual framework of missing institutions and saying that when you think about, actually let me do one thing. Let me show you some more pictures and then come back to this. These are just little snapshots. So these are other chai points. On the top right, you see a water purifier and a water sterilizer, which you need in countries like ours before you do things to put them in people's tummies. On the top left is a dispenser that you can use to move things around cleanly. On the top left is a training academy that we've created. So again, this is something that I'm quite proud of. We take kids who, so again, this is a company that has about 300 employees also. Is very profitable, has a few $1 million in revenue. And mostly the employees who work here are all people who would not have any prospect in life. So they have been taken as part of a people supply chain that we've created. We've taught them the most basic things, like how to comb their hair, wear a head net when they're serving people, wear gloves, shampoo, cut their nails, things like that, show up on time. That's what it takes to be an employee. And follow instructions for how to make a consistent cup of tea. Our typical store today is about 300 square feet. We serve about 8 to 12 kinds of tea. It's extremely high quality. It's got a beautiful supply chain that goes to the best plantations in South Asia to blend the tea. And we have a people supply chain that brings these people, trains them in our training academy. The picture on the bottom right is a annual Taste Masters contest that we run to reward the best cup of tea every year, to recognize them. And you know, it's off to the races. I'll show you some more pictures. On the right, we have a nationwide IT backbone now that's going to support the tea shops, prepaid cards, touchscreens. This is a chai point that just opened in New Delhi. And this is our architecture of the future chai point, which is going to start opening next month. These two pictures are schematics of the future chai point. So this is what's replacing the guy on the street. And we've managed to deliver an extremely high return on investment. Our lowest price of tea is, so in India, the cup of tea on the street is about 10 to 12 rupees. And our cheapest cup of tea is about 15 to 16 rupees. And then it goes up, 20, 25, 30, depending on what fancy things you want to do. But if you're a poor